Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. It's Wednesday, October 12th. This is Africa 54.
Lesotho's new Revolution for Prosperity Party forms a coalition government and promises to fight rampant corruption and spur economic growth. Former Ghanaian President John Mahama calls on Western countries to develop a master plan for Africa. And a South African startup seeks to transform how people send, receive, and save money. We'll talk to the co-founder of MojaPay.
Newly elected Lesotho President Sam Matekane, the diamond magnate who founded the populist Revolution for Prosperity Party, has announced that he has formed a coalition government after winning the most seats in last week's election. Here's David Doyle with more.
Having won the most seats in last week's election, Lesotho's new Revolution for Prosperity Party says it has formed a coalition government. The party, founded in March by diamond magnate Sam Matekane, took 56 seats in Lesotho's 120-seat parliament, short of an overall majority. That meant it had to go looking for alliances. Matekane told a media briefing on Tuesday that RFP has now teamed up with the Alliance of Democrats and the Movement for Economic Change. Under the outgoing All Basotho Convention Party, the Southern African Kingdom has been marred by years of political instability. The populist RFP has promised to do away with rampant corruption and focus on economic growth. Matekane said the cabinet would be downsized and all members would declare their assets, including himself. He also vowed that the coalition will tackle crime and eradicate corruption in its first 100 days.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. Now for more perspective on Lesotho's politics, I'm joined live via Zoom from Mutare, Zimbabwe by Lucid Chirova, a professor of international relations at Africa University. Professor Chirova, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for letting me.
So, Professor, the new president has formed a coalition of the three parties. What is the goal here?
The challenge with this formation of this coalition is that it's a coalition that is coming without the Lesotho government fulfilling the constitutional reforms. There are constitutional reforms, challenges in constitutional reforms. They are yet to fulfill the demand that they had to meet before the elections. That is constitutional reform. So they went on and have elections before fulfilling the constitutional reforms. That's the challenge. But we need to understand that having elections in Lesotho is illegal, as codified in the Constitution of Lesotho, which was adopted in 1993, and again as it is in the National Government Act of 1995, and again in the Local Government Elections Act of 1998. But this is a parliamentary election, which is a mixed member proportional system, whereby 80 members are elected in first past post constituents, and the remaining 40 members are elected by proportional representation. So the challenge now with the coalition government, it is a government of compromise. It is a government which will not reflect the will of the people. And again, the advantage of forming a coalition government is that it will lead to an unstable government. This is not the first. This is not the first coalition in Lesotho, and we are likely to see an unstable government. We are likely to see a tedious in terms of decision making. We are likely to see also personal interests being preferred over national interests. We are likely also to see appeasement policies that are going to be considered over development policies. So this
Professor,
is a government of
right, Professor, the president is also of the view that government officials, including himself, should not use government-issued vehicles. Instead, they should use their personal vehicles in order to kind of help the economy that is dwindling in the country. How practical is this, and what's the lawmakers' reaction to that?
This is a country that failed to pass constitutional reforms that they were supposed to amend before everything else. They were supposed to amend constitutional reforms before the elections. So I don't see what the president telling the population. Maybe he's trying to appease the electorate. But this is not a serious issue that an incoming president can draw on. You need to address the constitutional reforms that they failed to address before going for elections. These amendments, they were obviously going to reflect on the role of the political parties, the rules on floor crossover in parliament, and also the appointment of senior officials, and also the prime minister's role.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
This is a major issue, not the issue of vehicles. The issue of vehicles won't change the economy of Lesotho and the political times of Lesotho. This is a minor issue. Right.
Professor, we'll have to revisit the Lesotho politics another day. Thank you so much. Professor Lucid Chiroza is from the International Relations at Africa University. Authorities say at least 25 people have been killed in South Sudan after youths from two neighboring communities in the country's north clashed over a disputed borderline separating their areas. Violence is endemic in parts of South Sudan, where clashes triggered by localized disputes over grazing areas, water, cultivation grounds, and other resources often turn deadly. 5 medical staffers that contracted Ebola from treating the first confirmed case in Uganda in September have recovered and been discharged from an isolation unit in Entebbe. Ugandan Health Minister Jane Ruth Acheng says 5 affected districts have seen 54 confirmed cases with 19 deaths and 20 recoveries. Hudson Kunsa, a trainee doctor, is among the lucky survivors of the deadly Ebola virus.
We received all the treatment that we needed, even all the treatment that may not be enough to support all the other people that are affected. But because us, we are medical people who were given that privilege and we received the treatment, we want to thank the ministry and the other partners, the WHO, the GMEDIC, the IDI. We thank all of you for that.
For us today is a great day, seeing that the health workers who unfortunately contracted Ebola in the line of duty are today being discharged from isolation and will begin their integration back into the communities. It was a tough baptism into public health.
That was Jane Ruth Acheng, Uganda's health minister. Greek Coast Guard officials say the death toll from the sinking of 2 migrant smuggling boats has risen to 22, with at least a dozen still missing. One of those boats carried 46 people, 40 of them Somali migrants. The boats are believed to have traveled between Turkey and Greece. Now, for more on the African migrant deaths, I'm joined live via Skype from Rome by Lawrence Hart, Director of the International Organization for Migration's Coordination Office of the Mediterranean. Lawrence, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
So what really seems to be the issue here, because there are so many deaths of African migrants trying to reach Europe? As far as IOM is concerned, what is the issue here?
Well, migration is a phenomenon that has been existing since the existence of mankind. It's nothing new. The problem is that routes are getting more and more complicated and more dangerous, and therefore there are several people and networks exploiting migrants who are willing to find greener pastures or fleeing from persecution or conflicts. The problem is that the traffickers and the smugglers have become more and more unscrupulous many times when it comes to adopting and facilitating this kind of operation, often putting these victims, these people, these migrants, into unseaworthy vessels and dinghies, who obviously cannot sustain a long journey. Oftentimes, also journeys are becoming much longer. It's not just a few hundred miles, but it becomes often crossing half of the Mediterranean before getting to European shores.
Lawrence, you mentioned this as smuggling, and we already have a case that is ongoing, the trial of the Eritrean fugitive accused of helping run a human smuggling operation in several countries, Somalia, Ethiopia, Libya, and even Eritrea. Is his case likely to deter other smugglers from sending these very innocent, desperate Africans to Europe?
Well, you know, we believe it's very important to prosecute criminals who make money on hopes of people, and oftentimes selling dreams to people which do not materialize. However, it's like a little bit like, if you allow me, it's a little bit like the crime of the drug selling. Once you dismantle a network or one person, then others will just join the queue, and the networks will continue. Unfortunately, they're becoming more and more sophisticated and more unscrupulous. So while it's a good sign that finally, you know, someone gets prosecuted, unfortunately, this is only the tip of the iceberg many times, because these networks do exist and they are flourishing because trafficking and smuggling in human beings is becoming more lucrative than selling drugs.
Lawrence, thank you very much for your insight. Lawrence Hart is director of the International Organization for Migration's Coordination Office of the Mediterranean. Hoping to avoid the nationwide fuel shortages that hit the country earlier this year, the Democratic Republic of Congo's government is negotiating with oil companies over back payments. Paul Diho reports.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is negotiating with oil companies to settle its bills of around $160 million as it seeks to avoid nationwide fuel shortages. The shortages have caused long queues at gas stations in major cities. Business and government sources blamed the situation on delayed payments to suppliers as global fuel prices spiked due to the war in Ukraine. The Congolese Finance Ministry announced earlier this week that it had paid around $430 million in fuel subsidies, but still owed back payments of $160 million. Congo subsidizes fuel to avoid inflation and stabilize prices. However, the International Monetary Fund says that while fuel subsidies protect consumers, they expose countries to high physical costs. In July, the Congolese government launched bids for 30 oil and gas blocks in the impoverished Central African nation. However, the move was controversial, drawing criticism from green groups which warned that drilling in the Congo basin's rainforests and plateau lands could release vast amounts of heat-trapping gas. During COP27 climate talks in Kinshasa, the United States climate change envoy John Kerry said the United States asked the Democratic Republic of Congo to abandon some of the oil blocks that were put up for auction in sensitive environmental areas.
We are not suggesting that to anybody that the protection of the environment can't be mixed with good employment, good jobs, good economic opportunity, and strengthening the economy of the DRC, even as you protect the Congo Basin. Some of the area chosen for offering for auction, we believe, do put the balance at risk.
Around 30 billion tons of carbon are stored across the Congo Basin. Researchers estimated in a study in Nature in 2016. The figure is roughly equivalent to 3 years of global emission. The Congolese government maintains that exploiting its oil and gas resources is an economic necessity that could help its citizens.
I would like to reassure our partners of our determination to carry out exploitation and exploration using the most modern technological means that protect the environment, the fauna, and flora, and preserve the ecosystems and the ecological balance.
According to World Bank figures, some Congolese citizens live on less than $2 per day, despite the DRC enjoying vast reserves of minerals, ranging from gold and copper to cobalt and diamonds. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Former Ghanaian President John Mahama says he would like to see Western countries develop a Marshall Plan for Africa, just like the United States program that helped Europe's economic recovery from World War II. Mahama spoke to Hedy Adams, host of Straight Talk Africa, during a recent visit to Washington.
I think that it's a period of adversity for the whole world because it's triggering a kind of global recession. China and Russia and I don't know which other countries appear to be on one side, and then the whole Western world is also on the other side. Already in Africa, if we need funding for infrastructure, big infrastructure projects, the place to go is China and the East. Normally, the Western countries would invest in the social sector, in education, in healthcare, and things like that, but not big infrastructural projects. I'll make an exception for the Millennium Compact, which President Bush introduced and which Ghana has benefited from twice. But normally, if you want to do a bridge or a road or a railway or something, often you'll go to the East. At the last G7, the Western countries talked about a $600 billion a fund to assist Africa and other developing countries in terms of infrastructure. I know that the United States has put up the DFC, I think it's the DFC, and they've committed about $100 billion to assist countries in critical, infrastructural projects. So it's an opportunity for us to benefit, in terms of improving our infrastructure. But at the same time, it's an opportunity for us to look within and see what we can do better in terms of trading amongst ourselves. Happily, we've passed the African Continental Free Trade Area. And as I speak, the first commodities are beginning to be exchanged. A shipment of tiles from Ghana, I read this morning, is going to Rwanda. And a shipment of tea is coming from Kenya to Ghana. I mean, that's good news. I mean, we've been advocates of this for so long. We're happy it's happening now. 11% trade amongst ourselves. It's ridiculous. And so we're hoping that this can push trade between ourselves even to 50%, so that we're able to multiply the benefits within the continent, but also get benefits from outside. Africa never got a Marshall Plan. After the war, Europe was rebuilt because America put up big money to rebuild Europe. Africa has never got that opportunity in terms of a Marshall Plan to build our economies and all that.
Do you think Africa there should be a Marshall Plan?
Yes, after slavery, I think there should be a Marshall Plan. I mean, slavery affected the continent very adversely, and I do believe that if a Marshall Plan was put up, and we got the right leadership on the continent, and we do the kinds of things we're doing, trading, building the infrastructure on the continent, we can create a decent existence for our people. I have confidence that Africa is the next, emerging continent, and it's going to be the next frontier for investment and business.
Be sure to watch Hedy's full interview with John Mahama coming up on Straight Talk Africa and later on voaafrica.com. In other news, the United Nations General Assembly has elected South Africa, Algeria, and a dozen other countries to the Human Rights Council for a 3-year term starting on January 1st, 2023. Sudan won second term on the Geneva-based body. Europe turns to Africa for more natural gas in a bid to replace their reliance on Russian energy amid heightening tensions between Russia and Europe over the war in Ukraine. A tainted cough syrup scandal is gripping the Gambia. 69 children have died of acute kidney failure since July in a series of cases linked to 4 Indian-made cough syrups. The Smithsonian's National Museum of African Art here in Washington, D.C. has transferred ownership of 29 Benin bronzes to the National Commission for Museums and Monuments in Nigeria. The bronzes, which were part of the museum's collection, were stolen from Nigeria during the 1897 British raid on Benin City. The transfer of ownership was formalized in a ceremony at the National Museum of African Art Tuesday. The return of these Benin bronzes is the first return under the Smithsonian's new ethical returns policy announced this spring. The International Monetary Fund has released its World Economic Outlook for this year. It predicts global growth to slow from 6.0% in 2021 to 3.2% in 2022 and 2.7% in 2023. According to the outlook, the gloomy forecast is shaped by 3 power forces: Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the cost of living crisis caused by the persistent and broadening inflation pressures, and the slowdown in China. IMF economist Daniel Lee highlighted the factors causing the financial stress to the Horn of Africa region, in addition to high debt levels and a strengthening U.S. dollar.
It is a region very severely affected by the war in Ukraine. The food, fuel, and fertilizer price spike is having a negative effect on agriculture and a broad part of the economy. On top of that, this is one of the parts of the world where the COVID shock is still really severe in terms of the very low vaccination rates, 26% only in sub-Saharan Africa compared to 66% in the rest of the world. Only 2% have a booster compared to a third to a half in the rest of the world. So on top of that, the global slowdown means less demand for the products of the region. And then on top of that, the higher interest rates, low growth means that 2/3 of the countries in the regions are facing stress or debt distress. So this is why the attention here is very much on providing relief, also in terms of supporting the common framework to avoid the debt crisis from spreading.
That was IMF economist Daniel Lee. It's time for our technology report, and joining us now is our tech reporter, Paul Ndiho. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Esther. The growing need for digital payments over cash is changing how people interact with money across Africa. A South African fintech startup, MojaPay, aims to change that. People send money and receive and save money. The app is built specifically to support both formal and informal markets. I spoke to Zilosa Vuza, the co-founder and CEO of the Johannesburg-based startup. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Paul.
You have created this amazing application. You're trying to build some solutions for the African continent. What is MojaPay?
The platform allows you to pay for products or buy products using a variety of payment methods. So we built a platform for the unbanked and underbanked communities and businesses in the African continent. So the African continent, as you are aware, right? It's a continent, traditionally speaking, that is not very strong when it comes to banking services in terms of looking at the masses of people, right? That we have in the continent. There's a lot of evidence that shows that a lot of people are still using cash. The problem with cash, obviously, is that no one knows how much cash you've got and how much you've used. And therefore, when you want access to services, things like loans or even applying for credit, which is actually something that you need to improve your life, then it becomes a nearly, impossible task, right? It's a near impossible task to actually achieve. So we built this platform to actually bring, those communities and those people online. So we've built a platform to say, can we bring all these, type of customers online? Of course, in certain cases, we've got B2C. In certain cases, we've got B2B. B2C to B, those type of scenarios are actually managed and engaged on the platform.
If I hear you correctly, you seem to be suggesting that your platform is providing solutions for the unbanked, the everyday person who is on the street trying to make some money, trying to sell something. But you're also tapping into a very circulated market. You have the likes of the major players, the MTNs and what, tapping into the same people. How are you able to do that?
That's a very critical question you ask, Paul. And it's true. The market is full of players. There's quite a lot. You've mentioned quite a few. Even though you may feel that it's saturated, we think it's a market that's got huge space, for innovation, right? We are the only platform that supports all those type of customers in one platform. So what you see with the other platforms is that they actually have the customer, and of course they've got the agents, right? Because the agent model is quite important in the African continent. And the reason for that is that the only way to access the masses of people, is to have these agents located everywhere. Of course, we've got that component. We enable very different types of payment methods. So, we talk about the wallet as the key, payment method, because someone who's not banked obviously will not have an electronic means, right, to give you the money because there's no bank account, they don't have a card. So what we've done is we've built a wallet capability where someone can deposit money into the wallet, and they can use that wallet as many times as they want, as long as they've got the funds available for those transactions. Actually, at the moment, we don't charge customers for processing the transaction. We actually make our money off the commission, that we get from selling the electricity and driving the electricity.
How about the issue of security? Every time I talk to somebody who is building a payment platform, there are always security concerns. People are worried, is my money going to be safe? If I use this platform, am I going to have money on my account the next day? What measures have you put in place to make sure that you safeguard people's money?
We run on what we call the cloud platform. I don't know if you know AWS, Amazon Web Services. In fact, the Fortune 500 companies run on the same infrastructure. So for us, that was a consideration, right? Because you do get, people that will build something, run it, in their own infrastructure. So from a security point of view, we wanted to do that. But I think from a user point of view, we follow the same process that we would have with the banking system, where you need to log on, to the system. You'll have your username, you'll have your password. We also support mechanisms such as the one-time PIN, where you are able to get a PIN to authenticate that the transaction is being done by yourself using your cell phone number. But I think also from a cash movement and from a financial movement perspective, the platform works in what we call the prepaid mode. So you can never be able to move anything unless you already have the funds available, in the platform. But I think most importantly, we run on an enterprise-grade platform which supports, all the latest security standards. When we sign up customers to use the platform, we go through what we call the Know Your Customer process. We will ask you for your ID. We actually check that you're actually a real person, and we link your account appropriately to you. So that actually minimizes, obviously, the risk, of security in the platform.
On that note, thank you so much for your time.
We appreciate the opportunity to chat to you.
That was Zolisa Vuza, co-founder of Johannesburg-based Mojepe. That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
And thank you, Paul, and thank you for watching Africa 54. Good night.